That black guy? He'll never afford anything here anyway. The words slice through the kitchen door like a blade. Marcus Thompson freezes, sandwich halfway to his mouth, as his own employees mock a customer who looks exactly like him. The 38-year-old tech entrepreneur had walked into Sunrise Diner in casual clothes. His diner, his investment, his pride, expecting a quiet meal. Instead, he's witnessing the ugly truth about how his staff treats people who look like him. Manager Janet Morrison's voice carries clearly, "I don't know why corporate keeps pushing this diversity nonsense. These people don't tip anyway." Marcus sets down his food, his jaw tightening. They have no idea they're talking about their boss. They have no idea their world is about to change forever. What would you do if you overheard this about yourself? Drop your location in the comments. What Marcus does next will shake this restaurant to its core. Marcus had chosen Sunrise Diner for his quarterly undercover visit because the numbers looked wrong. Customer complaints up 40%, staff turnover through the roof, revenue declining despite the bustling neighborhood. As CEO of Thompson Hospitality Group, he'd built a reputation for creating inclusive spaces where everyone felt welcome. Walking in wearing a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, Marcus immediately notices the shift in atmosphere. The hostess, a young black woman named Keisha, greets him warmly, but her smile seems strained. She seats him in the back corner. Odd, since plenty of front tables sit empty. Janet Morrison emerges from behind the counter, a sharp-featured woman in her late 40s with bleached blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. Her eyes sweep over Marcus dismissively. She whispers something to the other server, a nervous-looking white girl named Brittany, who glances back at Marcus and giggles. Marcus orders the signature breakfast sandwich and coffee, keeping his voice neutral and polite. Janet barely acknowledges his order, instead launching into a conversation with Brittany about the changing neighborhood and how certain types are driving away their real customers. The coffee arrives lukewarm. The sandwich takes 30 minutes despite the kitchen being nearly empty. Marcus watches Janet laugh loudly with white customers while barely making eye contact with the few black and Latino patrons who filter in. When an elderly black man asks for extra napkins, Janet sighs dramatically and tosses them across the counter. When a young Latina mother requests a high chair, Janet claims they're all being cleaned, despite 3 sitting unused nearby. Marcus pulls out his phone, but what he overhears next stops him cold. Marcus watches Janet approach Keisha near the kitchen door, her voice low but venomous. "I saw you giving that table extra attention," Janet hisses. "We've talked about this. These people expect everything for free, and you're encouraging it." Keisha's shoulders tense. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm just doing my job. Good service for everyone." "Your job is what I say it is. And I'm saying stop coddling them. They tip in singles anyway, if they tip at all." Marcus's grip tightens on his coffee cup. He's heard complaints about Janet before, but HR had dismissed them as personality conflicts. Now he's seeing the truth unfold. "I need this job," Keisha whispers, her voice barely audible. "Then act like it. Start treating our real customers like they matter, not these." Janet pauses, glancing around, then leans closer. "Not these welfare cases." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He's built his company on the principle that everyone deserves dignity, respect, and a good meal. To hear his own manager, someone he's paying, spewing this hatred in his establishment makes his vision blur with rage. Keisha nods reluctantly and walks away, but Marcus catches the tears forming in her eyes. She approaches a young black couple with their toddler, her usual warmth dimmed by Janet's poison. Marcus pulls out his phone, switching to voice recording. He needs evidence. He needs proof. But more than that, he needs to understand how deep this rot goes. Janet returns to the counter, immediately brightening when a middle-aged white couple enters. "Welcome to Sunrise. Right this way to our best booth." The contrast is stark, undeniable, and absolutely damning. But Marcus's covert investigation is about to take a devastating turn. The breaking point comes when Marcus approaches the counter for his check. Janet's entire demeanor shifts. her fake customer service smile vanishing like morning mist. "That'll be $18.50, she says flatly, not looking up from her register. Marcus hands her a $20 bill. Janet holds it up to the light, examining it with theatrical suspicion. "Brittany, come look at this," she calls out loudly. "Does this look right to you?" The younger server approaches nervously. It looks fine to me." "Really? Because I've seen a lot of funny money lately, especially from—" Janet's eyes flick meaningfully toward Marcus. "Certain customers." The restaurant falls silent. Every patron turns to stare. Marcus feels the familiar burn of public humiliation, the same feeling he'd experienced as a child, as a teenager, as a young man climbing the corporate ladder. The feeling he'd sworn his success would shield him from forever. "Ma'am, that's a legitimate $20 bill," Marcus says calmly, though his heart pounds. "I'll be the judge of that." Janet picks up a counterfeit detection pen, making a grand show of testing the bill. Of course it passes. "Well, would you look at that? I guess it's real after all." She counts his change with deliberate slowness, dropping the coins one by one onto the counter instead of placing them in his palm. "You have a nice day now," she says, her voice dripping with false sweetness and unmistakable condescension. Marcus pockets his change, his jaw clenched so tight it aches. Around him, he senses the other customers' discomfort, some embarrassed by the display, others nodding in approval. The elderly black man from earlier catches his eye and shakes his head sympathetically. As Marcus turns to leave, Janet's voice carries clearly, "Some people have no shame, coming in here with their attitude, expecting special treatment." The words follow him to the door, but instead of leaving, Marcus stops. Through the window, he watches Janet return to the kitchen area, pulling Brittany with her. "I'm telling you, we need to be more careful about who we let hang around here," Janet's voice echoes from the back. "Corporate keeps pushing this inclusion crap, but we know what's really good for business." Marcus pulls out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. What Marcus discovers about Janet's past will make this betrayal devastating. Marcus sits in his Tesla outside the diner, hands trembling with controlled fury. In 38 years, he's faced racism in boardrooms, at country clubs, in upscale restaurants where he was the only black face. But this cuts deeper. This is his business, his investment, his dream being perverted into a nightmare. His phone buzzes. David's text is brief but damning. "Check your email. You're not going to believe this." The background report makes Marcus's blood pressure spike. Janet Morrison had been fired from her previous job, another restaurant chain, for discrimination complaints. 3 separate incidents, 2 settlements, 1 lawsuit that was quietly dropped. Her references were fake. Her hire was a complete failure of his HR department. Worse yet, the security footage David's already pulled shows a pattern stretching back months. Janet deliberately seating black customers in the worst sections, overcharging elderly Latino customers, training new staff to provide slower service to anyone who doesn't look like her. Marcus scrolls through complaint after complaint that were somehow never escalated to him. The system he'd built to protect his customers had been systematically undermined by one bitter woman with a fake smile and a heart full of hate. His phone rings. "Marcus, you need to see the kitchen footage from today." David's voice is grim. "She's talking about you specifically now." Marcus switches to the security app, watching in real time as Janet addresses the kitchen staff. "That guy who was just in here? Perfect example of why we need to be selective. These people think they own the place, coming in here with their demands and attitudes. I don't care what corporate says about customer service, we serve people who deserve it." The cook, an older Hispanic man named Carlos, looks uncomfortable. "Mrs. Morrison?" He seemed nice enough. "Carlos, you've been here 2 weeks. I've been running restaurants for 15 years. I know trouble when I see it. And that man?" Janet points toward the door Marcus just exited. "That's trouble with a capital T." Marcus ends the call and leans back in his driver's seat. In the business world, he's learned that the most devastating responses come not from anger, but from patience, from precision. He opens his contacts and begins making calls, first to his lawyer, then to his head of HR, then to his PR team. But the most important call is to his mother. "Mama," he says when she answers, "I need you to pray for me. I'm about to do something that might change a lot of lives." What Marcus does next will expose more than just Janet's racism. The next morning, Marcus returns to Sunrise Diner. But this time, he's not alone. 3 customers enter throughout the morning, all undercover investigators from David's firm. One is a well-dressed black businessman. Another is a Latino family with young children. The third is an elderly black woman using a walker. Marcus watches from his car as the hidden cameras capture everything. Janet's pattern is consistent, predictable, and absolutely damning. The businessman is told there's a 30-minute wait, despite empty tables. The Latino family is given a table near the kitchen door where the noise is overwhelming. The elderly woman is ignored for 15 minutes, while Janet serves 3 white customers who arrived after her. But Janet isn't working alone. Brittany follows her lead with nervous enthusiasm, clearly trained in this system of selective service. Even worse, when Keisha tries to help the ignored customers, Janet publicly reprimands her. "Keisha, I've told you about your priorities. Handle your assigned section." "But Mrs. Morrison, table 12 has been waiting." "Table 12 will wait until I say otherwise. Are we clear?" The confrontation happens in full view of customers, designed to humiliate Keisha and send a message to everyone watching. Marcus records it all, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. At 11 a.m., his phone buzzes with a text from David. "Legal wants to move. They have enough for immediate termination." Marcus types back, "Not yet. I want to see how deep this goes." His instincts prove correct. At 11:30, a white woman in business attire enters, someone Marcus doesn't recognize. Janet immediately brightens, greeting her like an old friend. "Sarah, how was the conference?" "Exhausting, but profitable. Are we still on for the meeting?" "Of course. Back office in 5 minutes." Marcus's blood runs cold. Sarah isn't a customer. She's conducting business with Janet during work hours, using his restaurant as her personal office. Through the security feed, Marcus watches the 2 women disappear into the back office, where they spread out papers and begin what appears to be a planning session. The secret meeting Marcus discovers reveals Janet's racism is just the beginning. David's voice crackles through Marcus's earpiece. "You're not going to believe what we just uncovered." The security footage from the back office reveals Janet and Sarah examining what appears to be financial documents, specifically customer demographic data and spending patterns for multiple Thompson Hospitality Group locations. "The beauty of it," Janet says clearly into the hidden microphone, "is that corporate doesn't track the right metrics. They see total revenue, but they don't see customer composition. Drive away the undesirables and the profit margins go up." Sarah nods enthusiastically. "My research shows that establishments with selective service see 23% higher per customer spending. It's simple economics." Marcus realizes with growing horror that Janet isn't just a racist manager. She's part of an organized effort to systematically exclude minority customers from his restaurants. "How many locations are implementing your recommendations?" Janet asks. 12 so far. The managers love it because their numbers improve, and corporate thinks they're just running tight ships. The conversation continues, revealing a network of managers across Marcus's company who have been trained to provide inferior service to Black and Latino customers while maintaining plausible deniability. Marcus's phone explodes with incoming messages from David's team. The investigation has expanded from one bad manager to what appears to be systematic discrimination across his entire restaurant chain. Screenshots of group chats show managers sharing strategies. The slow service technique works great. They leave on their own. Overcharge slightly on items without clear prices. They rarely complain. Schedule fewer servers during urban peak hours. But the most damaging revelation comes when Sarah pulls out a tablet showing customer satisfaction surveys. Look at these complaint patterns, she tells Janet. We're getting exactly the result we want. The complainers stop coming back, and our remaining customer base is much more manageable. Marcus realizes that customer complaints weren't being ignored by accident. They were being actively suppressed to hide the discrimination. His hands shake as he forwards everything to his legal team with a single message. Emergency meeting. 1 hour. Conference room A. But the final escalation will reveal corruption reaching someone Marcus trusted completely. Marcus's world implodes when David calls with the most devastating news yet. Marcus, we trace the consulting payments. Sarah's company is being funded through Thompson Hospitality Group's vendor management system. Someone at the executive level approved this. The betrayal cuts like a knife. Marcus built his company on principles of inclusion and respect, personally hiring executives who shared his vision. Now he discovers that someone in his inner circle has been systematically undermining everything he stands for. Who signed the authorization? Marcus asks, though he dreads the answer. Patricia Williams, your vice president of operations. The name hits Marcus like a physical blow. Patricia Williams, the woman he mentored, promoted, and trusted with overseeing restaurant operations across 43 locations. The woman who sat in board meetings talking about diversity initiatives while secretly funding their destruction. The security footage from Sunrise Diner continues revealing horrors. Sarah shows Janet a presentation titled Optimizing Customer Demographics for Maximum Profitability, an academic-sounding name for systematic racism. The key is subtlety, Sarah explains. Overt discrimination brings lawsuits, but if you make certain customers uncomfortable enough, they self-select out. Janet nods eagerly. And the staff training materials you provided work perfectly. New employees learn the system without anyone explicitly saying anything discriminatory. Marcus realizes that new employee orientation, something he'd personally overseen in the early days, has been perverted into a training ground for discrimination. His phone buzzes with another devastating text from David. Found the paper trail. Patricia has been routing customer complaints away from executive review. You've been seeing maybe 10% of the actual discrimination reports. The scope of the betrayal becomes clear. This isn't just about Janet Morrison or even Sarah's consulting company. This is about a systematic effort to transform Marcus's inclusive business model into something that would make him sick. Marcus makes a decision that will change everything. He calls his assistant, cancel all my meetings for the rest of the week, and get Patricia Williams on the phone. Tell her we need to discuss restaurant operations immediately. The confrontation Marcus is about to have will destroy careers and end friendships. Marcus walks back into Sunrise Diner at exactly 2 p.m., but this time he's not alone and he's not disguised. He enters wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, flanked by David and 2 attorneys. Behind them walks Patricia Williams, her face pale with the knowledge that her world is about to end. Janet looks up from the counter, her eyes widening as she takes in the group. Something about Marcus seems familiar, but she can't quite place him. The casual customer from yesterday seems like a different person entirely. Can I help you? She asks nervously. Marcus approaches the counter slowly, deliberately. Ms. Morrison, I believe we met yesterday. I was the customer you tested for counterfeit money. Recognition dawns in Janet's eyes, followed immediately by fear. I don't recall. Let me refresh your memory. Marcus places a small recording device on the counter. You said, and I quote, "These people expect everything for free." You also mentioned something about welfare cases and certain types driving away your real customers. The restaurant falls silent. Every employee, every customer turns to watch the confrontation unfold. Marcus continues, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. What you don't know, Ms. Morrison, is that I'm Marcus Thompson, CEO and founder of Thompson Hospitality Group. In other words, I own this restaurant. I own this building. And until about 30 seconds ago, I owned your paycheck. Janet's face drains of all color. Mr. Thompson, I can explain. No need for explanations. I have everything documented. Marcus signals to David, who begins setting up a laptop on a nearby table. Security footage, recorded conversations, financial records showing how you've been stealing from my customers and corrupting my staff. The laptop screen comes alive with footage from the previous day, Janet's discrimination in crystal clear detail. Gasps echo through the restaurant as customers and employees watch their manager's true nature exposed. But you weren't working alone, were you? Marcus turns to Patricia Williams, whose face is a mask of terror and shame. Patricia, would you like to explain to everyone how my VP of Operations has been funding a consulting company specifically designed to drive minority customers away from my restaurants? Patricia tries to speak, but no words come. The woman who once sat in board meetings discussing diversity initiatives now stands exposed as the architect of systematic discrimination. Marcus addresses the entire restaurant. To every customer who was mistreated in this establishment, I personally apologize. To every employee who was forced to participate in or witness discrimination, I apologize for failing to protect you. He turns to Keisha, who stands frozen behind the register. Keisha, you're being promoted to restaurant manager, effective immediately. Your first job is to hire a staff that reflects the values this company was actually founded on. The young woman's eyes fill with tears. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me fix this. Marcus faces Janet one final time. You're terminated immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. Any personal belongings can be collected later under supervision. Janet finds her voice, but it comes out as a desperate plea. Please, Mr. Thompson, I need this job. I have bills. You should have thought about that before you decided to turn my restaurant into a training ground for racism. Marcus's voice cuts through her excuses like steel. You're also banned from entering any Thompson Hospitality Group location, forever. As security escorts Janet toward the door, she makes one final desperate attempt. You can't do this. I'll sue for wrongful termination. Marcus's response is calm, devastating, and final. Feel free to try. I have 47 hours of recorded evidence showing systematic discrimination, financial fraud, and violation of federal civil rights laws. My lawyers are very eager to see you in court. The door closes behind Janet Morrison forever, but Marcus knows the real work is just beginning. But Janet's termination is just the beginning of a corporate reckoning. The war room at Thompson Hospitality Group's headquarters buzzes with controlled chaos. Marcus sits at the head of a conference table surrounded by lawyers, HR executives, investigators, and crisis management specialists. The scope of the discrimination conspiracy has expanded far beyond what anyone imagined. 43 restaurants, Legal Director James Chen reports, his voice grim. We found evidence of systematic discrimination at 43 of our locations, different levels of severity, but the pattern is unmistakable. Marcus absorbs the devastating news. More than 2/3 of his restaurant empire has been corrupted by Patricia Williams's optimization program. What's our legal exposure? Marcus asks. Significant, Chen responds. We're looking at potential class action lawsuits from affected customers, wrongful termination suits from employees who tried to report the discrimination, and possible federal civil rights violations. The HR director, Maria Santos, slides a thick folder across the table. It gets worse. Patricia's consulting company has contracts with 6 other restaurant chains. This isn't just our problem. It's an industry-wide scandal waiting to break. Marcus feels the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. He'd built his company to be different, to be better. Instead, he'd inadvertently funded the very discrimination he'd spent his life fighting. Recommendations? He asks. Chen opens his laptop. Option 1. Settle quietly. Pay the victims. Fire the managers involved. Make it go away. Estimated cost, $50 to $80 million. Option 2? Marcus asks, though he already knows he won't like it. Go public. Full transparency. Acknowledge the systematic discrimination, announce comprehensive reforms, cooperate with federal investigations. Estimated cost, $100 to $150 million, plus massive negative publicity. The room falls silent. Everyone knows which option makes business sense. Everyone also knows which option Marcus will choose. We go public, Marcus says without hesitation. Full transparency. Maria Santos looks stricken. Marcus, this could destroy the company. Our stock price will crater. Competitors will use this against us for years. Good, Marcus replies, surprising everyone. If our stock price is built on systematic racism, it deserves to crater. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus makes decisions that will reverberate through the restaurant industry for years. First, immediate termination of every manager involved in the discrimination scheme. No severance, no positive references, and full cooperation with law enforcement investigations. Second, creation of a $200 million victim compensation fund administered by an independent civil rights organization. Third, mandatory bias training for every employee conducted by outside experts, with completion tied to continued employment. Fourth, installation of bias reporting systems that bypass local management entirely, reporting directly to an external civil rights auditing firm. Fifth, complete restructuring of the hiring and promotion process to eliminate the networks that allowed the discrimination to spread. But Marcus's most radical decision comes at the end of the meeting. I'm stepping down as CEO, he announces quietly. The room erupts in protests, but Marcus raises his hand for silence. I built this company, and I failed to protect its values. I let my trust in people blind me to systematic oppression happening under my own roof. The company needs leadership that hasn't been tainted by this failure. Chen speaks up. Marcus, the board will never accept your resignation. This wasn't your fault. It was absolutely my fault, Marcus replies firmly. I hired Patricia. I created the systems she exploited. I ignored the warning signs because I wanted to believe we were better than this. So what's your plan? Maria asks. Marcus's expression hardens with resolve. I'm transitioning to chairman of the board. My replacement as CEO will be someone from outside the company, someone with a proven track record of fighting discrimination, and I'm personally leading a task force to investigate discrimination in the broader restaurant industry. The legal team exchanges worried glances. Marcus, Chen warns, if you go after the entire industry, you'll make enemies of every major restaurant chain in America. Good, Marcus replies. Maybe it's time this industry had some enemies of discrimination. The meeting concludes with a timeline that will reshape everything. Day 1. Public announcement of the investigation and Marcus's findings. Day 2. Launch of the Victim Compensation Fund. Day 3. Congressional testimony before the House Subcommittee on Civil Rights. Day 7. Release of the complete investigation report to the Department of Justice. Day 14. Implementation of new corporate policies across all Thompson Hospitality Group locations. Day 30. Launch of the industry-wide discrimination investigation. As the room empties, Marcus remains seated, staring at a photograph on the wall, the grand opening of his first restaurant, where he'd promised to create a place where everyone felt welcome. His phone buzzes with a text from his mother. Son, I saw the news. I'm proud of you for choosing what's right over what's profitable. For the first time in days, Marcus smiles. But before Marcus can reshape the industry, he faces Janet one final time. Federal District Court, 3 months later. Janet Morrison sits at the defendant's table, flanked by a public defender who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Her carefully maintained appearance has cracked. Hair unwashed, skin pale, wearing a wrinkled pantsuit that's seen better days. Across the aisle, Marcus sits in the gallery, no longer the CEO, but still the most important witness in the federal discrimination case that's captivated the nation. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Lisa Chang, addresses the packed courtroom. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Janet Morrison didn't just discriminate against customers. She orchestrated a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of hundreds of people over a 2-year period. Janet's lawyer, David Brennan, looks defeated before he even speaks. Your Honor, my client made mistakes, but she was following company policies that she believed were legal. The prosecution's case unfolds like a precision strike. Audio recordings of Janet's most damaging statements, security footage showing her systematic mistreatment of minority customers, financial records proving she overcharged Black and Latino families while providing discounts to white customers. But the most devastating testimony comes from Janet's former employees. Keisha takes the stand, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of her words. She told me that Black customers were problems waiting to happen. She said if I wanted to keep my job, I needed to make them uncomfortable enough that they wouldn't come back. Carlos, the Hispanic cook, testifies through an interpreter. She threw away food that Black customers ordered, saying it was good enough for them. She made me remake orders for white customers that were perfectly fine. Brittany, the young server who'd been trained in Janet's methods, breaks down completely. She said I was too nice to the wrong people. She taught me to make minorities wait longer, to act like I couldn't hear them when they called for service. I knew it was wrong, but I needed the job. The defense's case crumbles under the weight of evidence. Janet's lawyer tries to argue that she was just one person, that the discrimination wasn't systematic. But the prosecution presents emails, text messages, and recorded phone calls showing Janet coordinating with managers at other locations. When Janet finally takes the stand in her own defense, the result is catastrophic. I was just trying to improve the restaurant's profitability, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Prosecutor Chang pounces. By excluding customers based on their race? By focusing on customers who spent more money? And in your professional opinion, customers of which race spend more money? Janet's lawyer objects, but the damage is done. Janet's answer, a long, uncomfortable silence, speaks volumes. The cross-examination becomes a masterclass in dismantling bigotry. You testified that you've worked in restaurants for 15 years. In those 15 years, have you ever provided excellent service to a Black customer? Of course I have. Can you name one specific instance? Another devastating silence. During closing arguments, Prosecutor Chang delivers the knockout blow. Janet Morrison wants you to believe she was just doing business. But discrimination isn't business, it's a crime, and crimes have consequences. The jury deliberates for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Janet collapses as the verdict is read. 3 years in federal prison, $2.5 million in fines, permanent ban from working in any business that serves the public. As she's led away in handcuffs, Janet makes eye contact with Marcus one final time. Her expression isn't remorse or shame. It's pure, undiluted hatred. Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below. But Janet's conviction is just one victory in a much larger war. 6 months after Janet Morrison's conviction, Marcus stands before a joint session of Congress, delivering testimony that will reshape federal civil rights enforcement forever. Honorable Representatives, Marcus begins, systematic discrimination in the restaurant industry isn't an anomaly. It's a business model that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. The hearing room is packed with restaurant executives, civil rights advocates, and media representatives. Marcus's investigation has expanded far beyond his own company, uncovering discrimination practices at major chains across America. Our investigation found evidence of systematic discrimination at restaurant chains representing over $50 billion in annual revenue, Marcus continues. This isn't about isolated bad managers. This is about corporate cultures that reward discrimination when it's profitable. Committee Chairman Representative Sarah Rodriguez leans forward. Mr. Thompson, what specific changes are you recommending? Marcus's response is comprehensive and devastating to the industry status quo. First, mandatory federal auditing of customer service practices, with surprise inspections conducted by civil rights organizations. Second, Personal liability for executives who enable discrimination, including criminal penalties for systematic civil rights violations. Third, creation of a national database tracking discrimination complaints, making it impossible for bad managers to simply move between companies. Fourth, federal whistleblower protections for restaurant employees who report discrimination, with financial incentives for coming forward. The restaurant industry's response is swift and panicked. Lobby groups spend millions trying to water down the proposed reforms. Trade associations claim the changes will destroy jobs and raise food prices. But Marcus has built an unstoppable coalition: civil rights organizations, labor unions, consumer advocacy groups, and surprisingly, younger restaurant executives who are tired of the industry's discriminatory reputation. The breakthrough comes when Marcus testifies alongside other restaurant CEOs who've discovered similar problems in their own companies. Maria Gonzalez, CEO of Southwest Kitchen Chain, speaks with quiet authority. "We found managers at 12 locations who were charging Latino customers extra for premium service while providing inferior food. Our investigation revealed they'd learned these techniques from consulting companies that specialize in demographic optimization." David Kim, who runs a chain of 200 Asian fusion restaurants, adds, "The consulting industry that enabled this discrimination has annual revenues of over $400 million. They're selling racism as a business strategy to thousands of restaurants across America." The congressional hearing concludes with unanimous bipartisan support for the Restaurant Industry Civil Rights Act, the most comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation in decades. Within 6 months, the law's impact is dramatic. 847 restaurant managers terminated for discriminatory practices, $2.3 billion in victim compensation payments, 156 restaurants permanently closed for systematic civil rights violations, 23 consulting companies specializing in customer optimization shut down by federal investigators. But the most significant change is cultural. Restaurant workers begin reporting discrimination at unprecedented rates, knowing they're protected by federal law. Customer advocacy groups launch apps that track service quality across racial lines, creating public accountability for discriminatory practices. Marcus's own company becomes the gold standard for inclusive service, with customer satisfaction scores reaching all-time highs across all demographic groups. But the most important transformation isn't happening in boardrooms or courtrooms. 1 year later, Marcus walks into the renovated Sunrise Diner, now renamed Community Table. The transformation is remarkable, not just in the diverse staff and welcoming atmosphere, but in the small details that signal genuine change. The walls display artwork from local artists of all backgrounds. The menu features dishes from multiple cultures, reflecting the neighborhood's diversity. Most importantly, every table is filled with families and individuals who once would have been made to feel unwelcome. Keisha approaches with a genuine smile that reaches her eyes, so different from the strained expression she wore under Janet's management. "Mr. Thompson, your usual table?" Marcus laughs. "I'm just another customer today, Keisha. Seat me wherever works best." She leads him to a booth near the window, where he can observe the restaurant's natural rhythm. A young black couple with their toddler receives the same attentive service as the elderly white businessman at the next table. A Latino construction crew on their lunch break jokes easily with their server, a young white college student who clearly enjoys her job. This is what Marcus had envisioned when he first entered the restaurant business, a place where everyone truly feels welcome. His phone buzzes with updates from restaurants across his chain. Customer satisfaction scores continue climbing. Employee retention has improved dramatically. Most surprisingly, revenue has increased by 23% as word spreads about the company's commitment to treating everyone with dignity. Carlos approaches from the kitchen, his face beaming with pride. "Mr. Thompson, you want to try today's special? My grandmother's recipe for mole poblano." "I'd love to, Carlos." As Carlos returns to the kitchen, Marcus reflects on the journey from that devastating day when he overheard Janet's poison to this moment of genuine community. The legal battles are largely over. Janet served 18 months in federal prison before being released to a halfway house, permanently banned from food service work. Patricia Williams faced criminal charges and received a suspended sentence in exchange for cooperation with ongoing investigations. More importantly, the Restaurant Industry Civil Rights Act has transformed how restaurants operate nationwide. Discrimination complaints have dropped by 67% as companies implement real accountability measures. The consulting industry that profited from teaching discrimination has been dismantled by federal investigators. But Marcus knows the real victory isn't measured in statistics or legal precedents. It's measured in moments like this. An elderly black woman enters the restaurant, walking slowly with her cane. Without hesitation, the hostess offers assistance and guides her to a comfortable booth. The server brings water immediately, takes time to explain the menu options, and treats her with genuine respect. It's such a simple interaction, the kind that should be normal everywhere. But Marcus knows how precious this normalcy is, how many fights were fought to make this basic dignity possible. His meal arrives, and Carlos has added a personal touch, fresh cilantro arranged in a small heart on the plate. "For the man who gave us back our pride," Carlos says quietly. Marcus takes a bite of the mole, savoring flavors that represent generations of tradition being honored in a space that now truly welcomes everyone. His phone buzzes with a text from his mother. "Saw the article about community table in the paper. Your father would be proud." Marcus smiles, remembering his father's words from childhood. "Son, success isn't about how much money you make. It's about how many people are better off because you existed." As he finishes his meal, Marcus watches the steady stream of customers, all colors, all ages, all backgrounds, sharing the simple pleasure of a good meal in a welcoming place. This is the world he'd fought to create. Not perfect, but better. Not without challenges, but filled with hope. Marcus pays his check and stands to leave, but Keisha stops him at the door. "Mr. Thompson, there's something I want to show you." She leads him to a wall near the entrance that he hadn't noticed before. It's covered with photos and thank you notes from customers, a collage of gratitude from the community that now calls Community Table home. "Mrs. Rodriguez brings her grandchildren here every Sunday after church," Keisha explains, pointing to a photo of an elderly Latina woman surrounded by smiling children. "She told me this is the first restaurant where she's never felt like she was being judged." Another photo shows the young black couple Marcus had seen mistreated during Janet's reign. They're celebrating their anniversary at the same table where they were once made to feel unwelcome. "And this," Keisha says, her voice soft with emotion, "is from Carlos's daughter. She just graduated from culinary school, and she wants to work here because she says it's a place where food brings people together instead of keeping them apart." Marcus reads the handwritten note. "Thank you for creating a place where my father's food is appreciated by everyone, not just people who look like me." As Marcus walks to his car, he thinks about the ripple effects of that terrible day when he overheard Janet's hatred. The pain led to investigation. Investigation led to justice. Justice led to systemic change. And systemic change led to thousands of moments like the ones he just witnessed. His phone rings. It's David, his head of security, with news that makes Marcus's pulse quicken. "Marcus, we've got a situation developing at one of our competitors' chains. Similar pattern to what we found with Janet, but this time it's targeting Muslim customers. Local mosque is organizing a boycott." Marcus feels the familiar fire ignite in his chest. The work isn't finished. It may never be finished. "Send me everything," Marcus says, already planning his next move. "And David? Start putting together an investigation team." "Already on it. But Marcus, this one goes higher than Janet ever did. We're talking about documented policies from corporate headquarters." Marcus smiles grimly. "Then we better make sure our documentation is even better." As he drives away from Community Table, Marcus realizes that the fight against discrimination isn't a destination, it's a journey. Every victory creates space for the next battle. Every exposed injustice reveals 10 more hiding in the shadows. But that's okay. He's learned that justice isn't a moment, it's a practice, and he's got plenty of practice ahead of him. Should there be stricter penalties for workplace racism? Let us know where you're watching from. The radio crackles with breaking news about another restaurant chain facing discrimination allegations. Marcus turns up the volume, already strategizing his next move in the war for dignity and respect. The fight continues, but now he knows he's not fighting alone. When good people stay silent, bad people stay in power. But when good people find their voice, they don't just change companies, they change the world.